My daughter forbade me from attending her wedding, calling me too ugly. But when I entered the hall, the guests were stunned, and she dropped her champagne glass on the floor. She was afraid of embarrassment, but instead she saw something else. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The hipster cafe chair groaned under my weight as I shifted, checking my watch for the third time. 2:15. Beatrice was never late, which meant something big was happening. The exposed brick walls and indie music made me feel like an elephant in a pottery shop, but she'd chosen this place. My black coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago. Young professionals tapped away on MacBooks around me, their conversations about startups and cryptocurrency floating over the acoustic guitar bleeding from hidden speakers. I pulled my reading glasses from my shirt pocket, then pushed them back. Nothing to read except the anxiety in my chest. The sound of expensive heels on hardwood made me look up. There she was, my beautiful daughter, chestnut hair perfectly styled, striding through the cafe like she owned it. Her smile was radiant, almost glowing. Something sparkled on her left hand. "Dad!" She rushed over, practically bouncing. "I have the most incredible news." I stood up too quickly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Sweetheart, what's—" "Richard proposed." She thrust her hand toward me, the diamond catching the warm cafe lights. "Look at this ring. Isn't it gorgeous?" My heart nearly burst. "Beatrice, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you." I reached across the small table to squeeze her hand, careful not to knock over the coffee cups. "Tell me everything. When? How?" She slid into the chair opposite me, her excitement infectious. "Last night, at Powell's City of Books. He had them set up this whole romantic scene in the rare book room. Candles everywhere, first edition poetry books. It was like something from a movie." Richard sounds like a thoughtful young man. I'd never met him, but any man who made my daughter this happy had my approval. "What does he do again?" "He owns a tech startup, very successful." She waved her hand dismissively, the diamond catching light again. "But Dad, that's not even the best part. We're planning the most amazing wedding." I leaned forward, caught up in her enthusiasm. "Tell me about it." "The Rose Garden Pavilion in Washington Park, June 22nd, 150 guests." Her eyes sparkled as she painted the picture. "Imagine it. Garden ceremony with the city skyline behind us, reception under the stars, string quartet for the ceremony, jazz band for dancing. It's going to be absolutely perfect." The pride in my chest swelled. My little girl planning her dream wedding. "It sounds beautiful, sweetheart. I can't wait to walk you down that aisle." Something flickered across her face, too quick to catch. "Actually, Dad, there's something I need to discuss with you about the wedding." "Anything. You know I will help however I can." She touched my arm, her voice becoming softer, more careful. "The venue, the catering, the flowers, the music, it all adds up. We're talking about a $40,000 event." I blinked. 40,000 was more than I'd spent on my truck. That's quite a bit." "I know it sounds like a lot." Her fingers traced patterns on the table. "But this is my one chance, Dad. My one perfect day. Richard's family is very well connected, very prominent in Portland society. Everything has to be absolutely flawless." The desperation in her voice tugged at my heart. This was my only daughter, my only child since her mother died 10 years ago. If I couldn't give her the perfect wedding, what kind of father was I? "Of course I'll help." The words came out before I'd even fully processed the amount. "It's my daughter's wedding day." Her smile transformed her entire face. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it." I pulled out my checkbook, hands slightly shaky from excitement and the magnitude of the moment. $40,000 for my beautiful daughter's perfect wedding. I wrote the amount carefully, my engineering training making me double-check each digit. The number looked enormous on the small check, but watching Beatrice's face made it worth every penny. "Thank you, Daddy." She hadn't called me that in years. "You have no idea what this means to me." I tore out the check and slid it across the table. She picked it up with reverence, studying the amount as if memorizing it. "We should celebrate," I said, standing up and reaching for my jacket. "Come over to the house. I'll make dinner. We can look through your mother's jewelry box. Maybe there's something you'd like to wear." "That sounds lovely." She tucked the check carefully into her designer purse. "How about Thursday? I can come by around 10 in the morning." Perfect. 3 days to prepare something special for her. Maybe pick up some flowers for the house. I'm so proud of you, Beatrice. So happy. Walking to our cars in the light Portland drizzle, I felt taller than I had in months. My daughter was getting married, and I could provide for her dreams. I'd spent 3 days preparing for this moment. The house was spotless. Fresh daffodils sat in my late wife's crystal vase, and a cream-colored envelope rested on the coffee table like a ceremonial offering. Inside was the check that would make my daughter's dreams come true. At exactly 10 o'clock, Beatrice's BMW pulled into the driveway. I watched through the living room window as she gathered her purse and phone, her movements brisk and efficient, businesslike almost. "Come in, sweetheart," I called out as she knocked. "The door's open." She entered wearing a tailored coat and checking her watch. "Hi, Dad. Sorry I can't stay long. I have a meeting at 11:30. "No problem at all." I gestured toward the living room, where family portraits lined the mantel and my worn leather recliner held court over the space. I wanted to make this special. She perched on the edge of the sofa, purse in her lap, while I settled into my chair and picked up the envelope. "Beatrice, I've been thinking about this moment since you were little." My voice caught slightly. "When you'd play wedding with your dolls, making me walk them down the hallway while your mother played piano. I always knew someday I'd help make your real wedding perfect." I extended the envelope toward her with both hands. "Here's the check, sweetheart, for your perfect wedding. Every penny you need to make your dreams come true." She took it without ceremony, immediately opening it to verify the amount. "Thanks, Dad." The casualness stung a little, but I pushed the feeling aside. Young people were different now, less sentimental. "I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress, walking down that aisle. My beautiful daughter, starting her new life." Beatrice folded the envelope and tucked it into her purse. Then she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Actually, Dad, there's something else I need to tell you. You won't be at the wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean you're not invited." She said it matter-of-factly as if discussing the weather. "You won't be there." I gripped the arms of my recliner. "Beatrice, I don't understand. Why wouldn't I be at my daughter's wedding?" "Because you're too disgusting." The words came out flat, without emotion. "I can't risk you embarrassing me in front of the guests. Richard's family, my colleagues, important people from the community. They'll all be there. I need everything to be perfect." The room tilted. "Disgusting? Beatrice, what are you talking about?" "Look at yourself, Dad." She gestured at me dismissively. "You're overweight. You wear the same old clothes. You don't understand how to behave around successful people. I can't have you there making me look bad." I struggled to stand up, my legs unsteady. "Is this about my weight? I know I've gained some pounds since your mother died, but it's about everything." She stood too, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "Your appearance, your mannerisms, the way you talk. You don't fit in with the life I'm building. But I'm your father. I raised you. I loved you. I just gave you $40,000, which I'm keeping, by the way." She moved toward the door. "Thanks for that, but don't expect a wedding invitation." "Beatrice, please." I followed her, stumbling slightly. "We can work this out. I can lose weight, buy new clothes. Just forget about the wedding, Dad." She opened the front door, cool morning air rushing in. "Pretend it's not happening." I grabbed the doorframe for support, watching her walk down my front steps like she was leaving a business meeting. "Sweetheart, don't do this. Please don't do this." But she was already in her car, backing out of the driveway without looking back. I stood in my doorway until her BMW disappeared around the corner, the sound of her engine fading into the quiet Laurelhurst morning. The house felt enormous and empty behind me. $40,000 was gone, and so was my daughter's respect. The family photos on the mantel seemed to mock me. Happier times when I was a husband and father, not just a disgusting old man who embarrassed people. I closed the door and stared at the space where she'd stood, her words echoing in the sudden silence. The echo of her car door slamming still rang in my ears 2 hours later. I sat in my recliner, staring at the coffee table where the envelope had been, replaying every word she'd said. Too disgusting. My hands were shaking, not from age or caffeine, but from something deeper. a tremor that started in my chest and worked its way out to my fingertips. I kept hearing her voice, that matter-of-fact tone when she delivered the news, like she was canceling a dentist appointment. "You're too disgusting." I forced myself to stand up, my knees protesting. The hallway mirror caught my reflection as I walked toward the bathroom, and I stopped. When was the last time I'd really looked at myself? I mean, really looked. Not just the quick glance while brushing my teeth or combing what was left of my gray hair. In the bathroom, under the harsh fluorescent light, I saw what Beatrice saw. 265 pounds, hanging on a frame that had once been solid muscle. Gray hair that needed cutting, growing wild around my ears. Work-worn hands that showed every year of construction sites and tool belts. Clothes that had fit properly a decade ago, now stretched tight across my belly. Disgusting. I gripped the sink edge, my knuckles going white. Is this what my daughter saw when she looked at me? Not the man who'd taught her to ride a bicycle, who'd stayed up all night when she had pneumonia at 7, who'd worked double shifts to pay for her college tuition. Just a fat old man who would embarrass her in front of her important friends. The mirror didn't lie, but neither did the rage building in my chest. She'd planned this. The whole cafe meeting, the excited announcement, the careful way she'd asked for money. She'd known she was going to take my $40,000 and then cut me out of her life. She'd calculated exactly how to get what she wanted. I walked back to the living room, past the family photos that told a different story. There was 8-year-old Beatrice on my shoulders at the zoo, 16-year-old Beatrice at her high school graduation, my arm around her as she held her diploma, 25-year-old Beatrice at her college graduation, both of us beaming. When had I stopped being her hero and become her embarrassment? Fine, Beatrice. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, showing my desktop. A photo of Martha and me on our 25th wedding anniversary. Both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember now. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, "Personal trainers, Portland, Oregon." Dozens of results appeared. Professional fitness coaches, transformation specialists, people who helped other people become the best versions of themselves. I clicked through website after website, reading testimonials from men my age who'd lost 50, 60, 70 pounds. Before and after photos that looked like different people entirely. You want to see what your disgusting father is really worth? I opened a new tab and searched Nordstrom Men's Clothing Portland, then Hairstylist Portland Men, then Orthodontist Portland Adult Braces. The wedding was June 22nd, 3 months away, 12 weeks to transform myself from the man my daughter was ashamed of into someone she wouldn't recognize. By 4 o'clock, I had a notebook filled with appointments and phone numbers, personal trainer consultation for tomorrow morning, shopping appointment at Nordstrom for Saturday, hair appointment for Friday afternoon. By 6 o'clock, I'd made the first call. Revolution Fitness, this is Marcus. "Hello," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to completely transform myself in 12 weeks. I need to become someone my daughter won't be ashamed of." "Sir, I think you've called the right place." I hung up and looked at myself in the darkened kitchen window reflection. The man staring back at me wasn't disgusting anymore. He was determined. "You'll see, Beatrice. You'll all see." The alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m., but I'd been awake for an hour already. Sleep had become elusive since Beatrice's betrayal. 2 days ago, my mind churning with plans and her cruel words echoing in the darkness. Too disgusting. I pulled on the new workout clothes I'd bought yesterday, black athletic shorts and a gray moisture-wicking shirt that felt foreign against my skin. The fabric stretched tight across my belly, a stark reminder of what I was fighting against. In the bathroom mirror, I looked like a man playing dress-up in someone else's life. The gym membership card sat on my kitchen counter beside a cup of black coffee. Peak Fitness. I'd driven by 3 times yesterday, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows, as lean, confident people moved through their routines like dancers in a choreographed performance. Today, I'd join them. The Pearl District morning was crisp, downtown Portland just beginning to stir. My truck felt massive in the compact parking spaces, another reminder that I didn't belong in this world of sleek efficiency and purposeful movement. Inside Peak Fitness, the smell hit me first. Rubber, metal, and that faint scent of determination that comes from human sweat mixed with industrial-strength cleaning products. The space was enormous, filled with machines that looked like torture devices designed by engineers with too much imagination. First day, a young man approached, clipboard in hand. His name tag read, Jake, and his smile was professionally warm. I'm your trainer consultant, Dewey Bryant. My voice came out rougher than intended. I need to completely transform myself in 3 months. Jake's eyebrows lifted slightly. That's ambitious. What's driving the timeline? Special event? You could say it's personal. I followed him toward a desk area, aware of other gym members glancing in my direction. Whether they were judging my appearance or simply noting a newcomer, I couldn't tell. Let's start with an assessment. Jake pulled out a form. Current weight? 265. The number felt heavier spoken aloud. Target weight? Whatever makes me look like I deserve respect. Jake paused, pen hovering over the form. Okay, let's say 210. That's a 55-pound goal. Aggressive, but doable with dedication. He looked up. This is going to hurt, Dewey. Are you ready for that? I'm ready for anything. We started with the treadmill. I managed 8 minutes at a walking pace before my lungs began burning and sweat poured down my face. Around me, people ran effortlessly while talking on phones or watching mounted televisions. I felt like a broken machine trying to keep up with race cars. Don't compare yourself to them, Jake said, appearing beside me with a towel. Compare yourself to yesterday's you. The weight machines were worse. Basic movements that should have been natural felt awkward and strained. My body protested every repetition, muscles I'd forgotten I had screaming in rebellion. Jake adjusted seats, demonstrated proper form, corrected my posture with patient professionalism. How long have these people been at this? I gasped between sets, nodding toward a group of regulars who moved through their routines with mechanical precision. Years, some of them, but everyone started somewhere. He loaded lighter weights onto the machine. The secret isn't being perfect. It's showing up consistently. An hour later, I sat on a bench in the locker room, every muscle in my body trembling with exhaustion. My reflection in the mirror across from me looked defeated, red-faced, drenched in sweat, clothes clinging to my overweight frame like wet fabric. Disgusting, but something else flickered in that reflection, a spark of defiance that hadn't been there 2 days ago. Every step on that treadmill had been a step toward proving her wrong. Every weight lifted was proof that I wouldn't remain the man she'd dismissed so casually. Same time Thursday, Jake asked as I gathered my things. Same time every day, I corrected, until June 22nd. He grinned. I like your attitude. See you tomorrow, Dewey. Walking to my truck, my legs felt like jelly, but my spine was straighter than it had been in months. 3 months to transformation. 94 days to become someone she wouldn't recognize. The drive home took me past the Rose Garden Pavilion where her perfect wedding would unfold. I slowed down, studying the venue through my windshield. Come June, I'd walk through those gates as a different man entirely. 26 days of pain had brought me to this bench overlooking the ravine, my chest heaving like a broken bellows. The run through Forest Park had started well enough, my usual 3-mile loop that I'd been conquering gradually, but today my body had simply quit halfway through, leaving me gasping and defeated on this weathered wooden seat. The Douglas firs towered around me, their branches filtering the late afternoon sunlight into scattered gold coins on the trail. Somewhere in the distance, traffic hummed along northwest Portland streets, but here in the woods, I felt utterly alone with my failure. Too disgusting. 20 pounds lost. Jake had celebrated the milestone yesterday, taking progress photos and updating my workout plan. But sitting here, sweat cooling uncomfortably on my skin, those 20 pounds felt meaningless against the 45 I still needed to lose. The wedding was 68 days away, and I was already hitting walls I couldn't climb. Dewey Bryant? I looked up to see a familiar figure approaching from down the trail. Tom Reynolds, my neighbor from 3 houses over, walking his usual evening route through the park. We'd been army buddies once, decades ago, but since Martha's death, our interactions had dwindled to occasional waves across the street. Tom. I wiped my face with my shirt, trying to disguise the exhaustion. Didn't expect to see you here. I walk this trail every evening. He paused, studying my appearance with sharp eyes that still held traces of the drill sergeant he'd once been. You've lost weight, quite a bit, actually. Some? I struggled to stand, my legs protesting. Tom was still lean at 68, his posture military straight, despite his graying hair. Next to him, I felt like a melting snowman. Rough workout today. He settled onto the bench beside me, uninvited but not unwelcome. Rough month. The words came out before I could stop them. Something about Tom's presence, maybe it was the shared history or just the relief of having another human being acknowledge my existence, loosened my tongue. I can't do this anymore, Tom. It's too hard. Do what? I gestured at my sweat-soaked clothes, my red face, the trail where I'd surrendered. This, all of it, trying to become someone I'm not. Tom leaned back against the bench, his expression thoughtful. Dewey, are you giving up? That's not the soldier I remember from Firebase Charlie. The memory hit me unexpectedly. Firebase Charlie, Vietnam, 1978. 3 days under siege with dwindling supplies and no communication with base command. Tom had been the one who kept morale up, who convinced us we could hold the position until relief arrived. That was different. We were young then. Bullshit. His voice carried the same authority it had 47 years ago. We were scared kids who learned to push through when everything looked hopeless. You've got that same strength, Dewey. What's really driving this transformation? I stared at the ravine below, watching shadows lengthen as evening approached. The words came slowly, painfully, like extracting shrapnel from an old wound. My daughter, Beatrice, she's getting married in June. Congratulations, that's wonderful news. She doesn't want me there. The admission felt like vomiting glass. She called me too disgusting to attend, said I'd embarrass her in front of the important people. Tom's silence stretched long enough that I glanced over at him. His jaw was clenched, the muscles in his temples working. She said that? Your own daughter? After I gave her $40,000 for the perfect wedding? The bitterness in my voice surprised me. She took the money and told me I wasn't invited, because I'm disgusting. Then show her she was wrong. Tom's voice was quiet but fierce. But do it for yourself, not her. I don't know if I can. Look at me. I gestured at my exhausted state. 26 days, and I can barely run 3 miles without collapsing. Tom stood up, his movements crisp and purposeful. You know what my son told me after his mother died? Called me a failure as a husband and father. Said I was too rigid, too demanding, that I'd driven his mother to an early grave with my military ways. I'd never heard this story. Tom had always seemed to have his life perfectly ordered, his family relationships smooth and uncomplicated. What did you do? I became the man he needed, not the man I'd always been. He extended his hand to help me up. It took 2 years, but we rebuilt our relationship, because I was willing to change, not for revenge, but for self-respect. Standing beside him, I felt something shift in my chest, not the burning exhaustion from the run, but something warmer, something that felt like hope rekindling. You think I can do this? I know you can, but you need to decide. Are you transforming yourself to hurt her, or to honor yourself? We walked together toward the parking area, Tom's steady pace matching my slower steps. The question he'd asked echoed in my mind, and gradually I understood the difference. Revenge was about her. Self-respect was about me. Same time tomorrow? Tom asked as we reached our cars. Same time tomorrow, I agreed. But this time it wasn't just about proving Beatrice wrong. It was about proving to myself that the man she'd dismissed still had fight left in him. 6:30 a.m. at peak fitness, and the treadmill hummed beneath my feet at a steady 6-mile-per-hour pace. 2 months ago, I could barely manage 8 minutes of walking. Now I was completing 5-mile runs without stopping, my breathing controlled and steady. The digital display showed calories burned, distance covered, time elapsed, numbers that told the story of my transformation better than any mirror. Looking strong today, Dewey? Jake appeared beside me with his usual morning energy, tablet in hand. Ready for some progress photos? I nodded, stepping off the machine. In the gym's photography area, I stood against the white background where Jake had first documented my defeat. Now, looking at the camera, I saw someone different in the preview screen. Not young, I'd never be 25 again, but solid. Purposeful. 43 pounds lighter than the broken man who'd first walked through those doors. Incredible transformation, Jake said, reviewing the photos. You've put on significant muscle mass while losing the weight. What's your secret? Spite, I said, then caught his confused expression. I mean, determination. Back home by 9 a.m., I stood in my bedroom before the full-length mirror Martha had insisted on hanging there years ago. The reflection that looked back at me bore little resemblance to the man Beatrice had called disgusting 9 weeks earlier. My face was angular now, cheekbones visible for the first time in decades. My shoulders had broadened from the weight training, creating a V shape that my properly fitting clothes emphasized rather than hid. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out an elegant cream envelope, the kind used for wedding invitations. Inside was a carefully prepared invoice for $40,000, itemized for wedding consultation services and father of the bride exclusion fee. At the bottom, I'd written in my engineer's precise handwriting, payment terms, respect due upon receipt. The wedding was 33 days away, June 22nd, a Saturday ceremony at the Rose Garden Pavilion, followed by a reception under the stars. I'd memorized every detail from the materials she'd shown me that day at the cafe when I still believed I mattered to her. That evening I drove to Mitchell's men's store in downtown Portland, a place I'd passed 1,000 times but never entered. The windows displayed mannequins in perfectly tailored suits that looked like they cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Good evening!" The sales associate was a man about my age with silver hair and an impeccably pressed shirt. "I'm Robert. How can we help you today?" "I need a suit for a special occasion." Robert's trained eye assessed me quickly. My posture, my build, the confidence in my voice. "You look fantastic, sir. Have you lost weight recently?" "You could say I've returned to life." He led me through the store, past racks of suits, organized by style and season. "What's the occasion, if you don't mind my asking?" "My daughter's wedding. I want to make sure I look appropriate." "Congratulations. Father of the bride is a special honor." If only he knew. Something that makes a statement. We settled on a charcoal gray suit with subtle pinstripes. Classic, expensive, unmistakably elegant. Robert was a master of his craft, pinning adjustments with swift precision while explaining the nuances of proper fit. "The jacket should embrace your torso without clinging," he said, adjusting the shoulders. "We want to honor your build, which is quite impressive for a man your age. You clearly take care of yourself." In the fitting room mirror, I looked like a different person entirely. The suit transformed my engineer's frame into something that commanded attention and respect. This wasn't the broken widower who'd sat in that cafe chair 2 months ago, desperately trying to please his ungrateful daughter. This was a man who belonged in any room he entered. "Perfect fit," Robert declared. "When do you need it?" "The wedding is June 22nd, a Saturday. Plenty of time for final alterations. We'll have it ready by the 15th? I paid for the suit, shirt, tie, and shoes with my credit card, watching the total climb without flinching. This wasn't just clothing. It was armor for the battle ahead. Driving home through the warm May evening, I felt the satisfaction of a campaign well executed. Every morning run, every weight lifted, every hungry night had led to this moment of preparation. Beatrice had wanted me to stay away because I was too disgusting for her perfect day. She was going to get exactly what she paid for, a lesson in what happens when you mistake your father's love for weakness and his absence for victory. 3 months and 4 days after my daughter called me disgusting, I stood before my bedroom mirror, adjusting the Windsor knot on a silk tie that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. The man looking back at me bore little resemblance to the broken father who'd written that $40,000 check in March. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the formal attire laid out on my bed like ceremonial armor. The charcoal suit with subtle pinstripes, tailored to perfection by Robert at Mitchell's. Italian leather shoes that gleamed like black mirrors. A white dress shirt so crisp it could cut paper. Each piece represented a step in my transformation from the man she'd dismissed to someone she wouldn't recognize. I'd woken at 5 a.m., not from anxiety, but from anticipation. The same focused energy that had carried me through Firebase Charlie in Vietnam now pulsed through my preparation ritual. Shower, shave, cologne. the expensive kind that smelled of confidence and cedar. Every detail mattered today. The envelope sat on my dresser, cream-colored and elegant. Inside was my carefully prepared invoice for wedding consultation services and father of the bride exclusion fee. $40,000, itemized with an engineer's precision. At the bottom, in my neat handwriting, payment terms, respect due upon receipt. I slid the envelope into my jacket's inside pocket, feeling its weight against my chest. This wasn't just paper and ink, it was justice served on fine stationery. The mirror reflected a transformation that went deeper than lost weight and tailored clothing. My posture was straight, shoulders back, chin level. The defeated slouch that had marked me for months after Martha's death was gone, replaced by the bearing of a man who'd rebuilt himself from shame into strength. Disgusting, she'd called me. The word had carved itself into my psyche that March morning, a blade that had initially wounded but ultimately motivated. Every morning at Peak Fitness, every declined dessert, every moment of pain had been payment toward this reckoning. I fastened platinum cufflinks, another gift to myself, and checked my appearance one final time. The face in the mirror was lean, defined, alert. My gray hair was expertly cut and styled. Even my hands looked different, manicured, strong, confident. Outside, my truck waited in the driveway, freshly detailed for the occasion. The drive to Rose Garden Pavilion would take 25 minutes. The ceremony started at 4 o'clock. Perfect timing for an entrance that would make the afternoon memorable for everyone involved. I walked through my house one last time, past the family photos that told the story of who I'd been. The man in those pictures, holding baby Beatrice, teaching her to ride a bicycle, beaming at her graduation, that man had been discarded like an embarrassing mistake. Today he was returning as someone entirely different. The keys felt solid in my palm as I locked the front door behind me. My reflection in the truck's window showed a man ready for anything. After 3 months of transformation, it was time for revelation. Starting the engine, I pulled out of the driveway and headed toward Washington Park. Beatrice was about to learn what happens when you mistake your father's love for weakness and his temporary defeat for permanent surrender. The wedding would be everything she'd dreamed of, including a surprise guest she never expected to see. The parking attendant directed me to a space between a Mercedes and a Tesla, the kind of expensive cars I'd expected at Richard's society wedding. Walking toward the pavilion, I could hear the string quartet playing something classical and romantic, notes floating over the rose gardens like audible perfume. 2 young men in matching black suits stood at the ceremony entrance, checking names against a guest list. The taller one looked up as I approached, his expression politely professional. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you here for the Bryant Hayes wedding?" "I am indeed." I straightened my tie, projecting the confidence of someone who belonged. "Beautiful day for it." "Absolutely. Friend of the bride or groom?" The question hung in the air for a moment. "I'm close to the family." He gestured toward the seating area without checking his list. Why would he? I looked like any other well-dressed wedding guest, not the excluded father who'd been deemed too embarrassing to attend. The ceremony was in progress, Beatrice and Richard standing before an arch of white roses, while the officiant spoke about love and commitment. I chose a seat toward the back, far enough away to remain unnoticed, but close enough to see everything clearly. She was radiant in her wedding dress, a flowing creation of silk and lace that caught the afternoon light like captured starlight. Her chestnut hair was styled in an elegant updo, secured with what looked like Martha's antique hair combs. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and seeing her on her wedding day stirred emotions I hadn't prepared for. "Beautiful ceremony, isn't it?" whispered the woman beside me, a silver-haired lady in a navy dress. "Breathtaking," I agreed. "Do you know the families well?" "Oh, I work with Richard's company. Such a lovely couple. Though I heard there was some sadness with the bride's father." "Oh?" She leaned closer, dropping her voice. "Apparently he passed away recently. Very tragic. That's why she's walking down the aisle alone." I nearly choked on my own breath. "Is that so?" Richard mentioned it during the rehearsal dinner. Poor girl, losing her father right before her wedding. But she's being so brave about it. The ceremony continued while I processed this revelation. Beatrice hadn't just excluded me. She'd killed me off entirely. In the story she'd told her new husband and his family, I was safely buried and forgotten, unable to embarrass anyone ever again. The officiant asked if anyone had objections to the union. I remained silent, but my fingers traced the envelope in my jacket pocket. Soon enough, there would be time for objections. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced, and Richard lifted Beatrice's veil for their first married kiss. The guests erupted in applause and cheers as the newlyweds walked back down the aisle, beaming with joy. I joined the applause, clapping for my daughter's happiness while planning her education. As guests filed toward the reception hall, I fell into step with the crowd. The woman beside me continued chatting about the beautiful ceremony, the lovely venue, the romantic atmosphere. I made appropriate responses while studying the reception layout through the tall windows. Round tables with rose centerpieces filled the elegant space. A head table at the front awaited the wedding party, while a jazz quartet set up near the dance floor. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, and the photographer moved through the crowd capturing candid moments. "Such a shame about her father," the woman said again as we entered the reception area. "But at least she has Richard's wonderful family now." "Yes," I said, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "I'm sure he would have been very proud of her today." The irony was delicious. Here I stood, mourning my own fictional death, while preparing to resurrect myself in the most spectacular way possible. Beatrice had made me disappear to avoid embarrassment. In a few minutes, I would reappear to provide her with an entirely different kind of memorable moment. I positioned myself near the bar, where I could observe the head table while maintaining my anonymous guest status. Beatrice sat beside her new husband, accepting congratulations and posing for photos, glowing with the satisfaction of a perfect wedding day. She had no idea that her biggest surprise was still to come. The cocktail hour was in full swing when I made my move. Beatrice stood near the gift table, champagne flute in hand, laughing at something one of her bridesmaids had whispered. She looked radiant in the warm light of the reception hall, every inch the perfect bride she'd dreamed of becoming. I approached slowly, deliberately, timing my movement for when she was between conversations. Her bridesmaid excused herself to visit the restroom, leaving Beatrice momentarily alone. "Perfect." "Excuse me," I said, stepping into her line of sight. She looked up with the practiced smile of a bride greeting wedding guests, her eyes taking in my appearance without recognition. For a moment, I watched her mind work, trying to place this well-dressed stranger who seemed familiar but out of context. Then it hit her. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers as if her nervous system had simply short-circuited. Crystal shattered against the hardwood floor, sending champagne and glass fragments across her white satin shoes. The sound cut through the ambient chatter like a gunshot, causing nearby guests to turn and stare. "Dad?" The word came out as a whisper, then louder, more desperate. "Dad? Is that really you?" "Hello, Beatrice." I kept my voice calm, controlled. "Beautiful wedding. You look absolutely radiant." Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. She stared at me as if I were a ghost materialized from her worst nightmare. Which in a way I suppose I was. I can't believe it. You look so different." She gestured helplessly at my transformation, her voice rising with each word. When did you?" 3 months can work wonders," I said, adjusting my cufflinks with deliberate casualness. "Perhaps I'm not quite as disgusting as you believed." Richard appeared at her side, drawn by the commotion and his new wife's obvious distress. His confused gaze moved between us, trying to understand the connection. "Beatrice, what's wrong? Who is this?" She struggled with the words, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling. "This is my father." Richard's face went through several rapid expressions. Confusion, disbelief, then dawning understanding. "Your father? But I thought, you said he was dead?" I supplied helpfully. "Yes, I heard about my unfortunate demise. Very touching story, actually. Lost right before the wedding. Such tragic timing." A small crowd was gathering, drawn by the broken glass and the bride's obvious shock. I could hear whispers starting, the kind of urgent murmuring that spreads through social events when drama unfolds. Dad, please, Beatrice whispered, grabbing my arm with desperate fingers. I'm so sorry about what I said before. I didn't mean it. Please don't ruin this. Please stay. You're welcome here. You're my father. The transformation in her tone was remarkable, from dismissive cruelty 3 months ago to desperate pleading now. Amazing what a little embarrassment in front of important people could accomplish. You want me to stay? I asked, raising my voice just enough for nearby guests to hear. At your wedding? How generous of you. Yes, of course. I was wrong before. I was stressed and said terrible things. But you're here now, and you look wonderful, and how interesting. I smiled, the expression perfectly pleasant and absolutely predatory. 3 months ago, you had quite different feelings about my attendance, called me too disgusting to be seen with, if memory serves. Richard stepped closer to his wife, protective instincts kicking in despite his confusion. Sir, I think there might be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding at all, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. In fact, I brought a wedding gift, something very special, just for Beatrice. My fingers closed around the cream-colored envelope, and I saw her eyes follow the movement. Somewhere deep in her expression, I caught a flicker of fear. She was beginning to understand that her transformed father might have more surprises in store than just his physical appearance. A gift? She said weakly. Dad, you don't need to. Oh, but I do. I smiled again, feeling the weight of 3 months' worth of justice in my jacket pocket. After all, what kind of father would I be if I didn't give my daughter exactly what she deserves on her wedding day? The shattered champagne glass had been swept away, and for a moment the reception hall settled into an uncomfortable calm. Beatrice stood beside me, her face flushed with relief and nervous energy, while Richard hovered nearby like a diplomat trying to prevent an international incident. I'm so glad you're here, Dad, Beatrice said, reaching for my arm with trembling fingers. I was wrong to say those things. Stress makes people say terrible things they don't mean. The guests who had witnessed our reunion began returning to their conversations, the immediate drama apparently resolved. Someone laughed at a nearby table. The jazz quartet started playing again. Wedding normalcy was reasserting itself, and Beatrice was visibly relaxing as she realized her perfect day might be salvaged after all. Of course I forgave you, sweetheart, I said, patting her hand gently. After all, what kind of father would I be if I didn't bring you a proper wedding gift? Her eyes brightened immediately. Oh, Dad, you didn't need to bring anything. Having you here is gift enough. Nonsense. I reached into my jacket pocket and withdrew the cream-colored envelope I'd prepared so carefully. Every bride deserves something special from her father on her wedding day. Richard stepped closer, his expression warming. That's very thoughtful of you, sir. I look forward to getting to know you better. I held the envelope toward Beatrice with both hands, the way I'd once presented her with birthday presents when she was small. This is my wedding gift to you, sweetheart. Open it. She accepted it with the same bright smile she'd worn as a child, her fingers working at the elegant seal. You're so sweet, Dad. I can't wait to see what... The smile froze on her face as she pulled out the contents. Her eyes scanned the professional letterhead, the itemized list, the bold figure at the bottom. For a moment, she simply stared, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. What? What is this? Her voice came out as a whisper. Your wedding bill, I said calmly. $40,000 plus administrative fees and emotional damages, itemized for services rendered in wedding consultation and father of the bride exclusion. The color drained from her face, then flooded back in a wave of crimson fury. This is a joke, right? This has to be a joke. I'm afraid not. You see, when you called me too disgusting to attend your wedding and then took my money anyway, you established our relationship as a business transaction. I'm simply providing you with the invoice. Richard moved closer, trying to read over her shoulder. Beatrice, what's he talking about? What invoice? He's billing me. Her voice was rising now, drawing attention from nearby tables. For the money I asked him for, he's treating me like a client. Just like you treated me like a bank account, I replied evenly. Funny how that works. She crumpled the invoice in her fist, her composure completely shattered. You can't do this. This is my wedding day. These are our guests. The same guests you were so worried I would embarrass? I gestured around the elegant reception hall. Strange how that concern has suddenly evaporated. Richard stepped between us, his hands raised in a peacekeeping gesture. Look, let's all take a step back here. This is obviously a family misunderstanding that we can work out privately. There's no misunderstanding, Beatrice snapped, waving the crumpled invoice. He's trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. Humiliate you? I adjusted my cufflinks, a gesture I'd practiced until it became automatic. My dear daughter, you accomplished that all by yourself 3 months ago. I'm simply returning the favor. The conversation at surrounding tables was dying away as more guests became aware of the family drama unfolding. I could see heads turning, ears straining to catch our words. The wedding photographer was discreetly positioning himself for potential shots, sensing that this moment would be remembered long after the ceremony was forgotten. Dad, please! Beatrice's voice cracked with desperation. Don't do this. Not here. Not now. I looked at her for a long moment, seeing not the cruel woman who had dismissed me as disgusting, but the little girl who had once believed her father could do anything. The transformation had changed more than my appearance. It had given me the strength to demand the respect I'd always deserved. You want me to stop? I asked quietly. Then perhaps it's time everyone knew the whole story. I turned toward the microphone stand where the jazz quartet's lead singer had been performing moments earlier. The band was taking a break, and the microphone stood waiting, silver and beckoning, like a sword waiting to be drawn. Richard grabbed my arm. Sir, please, whatever happened between you two, this isn't the place. On the contrary, I said, gently removing his hand, this is exactly the place. The microphone felt solid in my hand as I tapped it twice, the sound echoing through the reception hall like a judge's gavel. Conversations died away as 150 wedding guests turned their attention toward me, expecting perhaps a traditional father of the bride toast. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system, thank you for your attention. I'd like to say a few words about my daughter Beatrice. Behind me I could hear her frantic whisper, Dad, stop this, please. I turned slightly, just enough to include her in my peripheral vision. 3 months ago, Beatrice came to me with wonderful news. She was engaged to Richard, and she wanted the wedding of her dreams. A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd. This sounded like a perfectly normal wedding speech. She asked me for $40,000 to make her perfect day possible, and being a father who loves his daughter, I gave her every penny without hesitation. Nods of approval from the audience. A generous father supporting his daughter's happiness. What could be more touching? But then, I continued, letting my voice carry the weight of betrayal, she told me something else. She said I was too disgusting to attend this wedding, that I would embarrass her in front of all of you important people. She took my money and banned me from my own daughter's wedding. The change in the room was immediate and electric. Gasps echoed from multiple tables. I saw hands fly to mouths, eyes widen in shock. The guests who had been smiling and nodding moments before now stared at Beatrice with expressions ranging from confusion to horror. Dad, that's not how it happened. Beatrice's voice cracked as she tried to interrupt, but the microphone was mine now. So I decided to show her, and myself, what I was truly worth. I gestured to my transformed appearance. Every morning at the gym was preparation for this moment. Every pound lost was proof that respect must be earned, not simply given because someone shares your blood. An elderly woman at a front table leaned forward, studying my face with new understanding. My goodness, she whispered, loud enough for others to hear. Look at him. He's completely transformed himself. That's right, I continued, warming to my theme. This is what 3 months of determination looks like when someone you love calls you disgusting. This is what happens when a father decides he deserves better treatment from his own child. Richard was pulling at Beatrice's arm, trying to get her to leave the immediate area, but she seemed frozen in place, watching her perfect wedding day crumble around her like tissue paper in rain. She told everyone I was dead, I said, letting that revelation hang in the air. Rather than admit she had excluded her own father from her wedding, she simply erased me from existence. How convenient. The murmurs were growing louder now. I could see guests turning to each other, processing this information, making judgments. The social pressure was building exactly as I had hoped. But I'm very much alive, as you can see. alive and well and 43 pounds lighter than the man she called too disgusting to be seen with. A man from Richard's side of the family stood up suddenly. "This is outrageous. How could you treat your father this way?" Others were nodding, their expressions shifting from confusion to disapproval. The moral weight of the room was turning against Beatrice, like a tide changing direction. "Please," she tried once more, her voice barely audible over the growing murmur of judgment. "This is my wedding day." "Yes, it is," I agreed, adjusting the microphone stand. "The wedding day you paid for with my money, while ensuring I wouldn't be here to see it." "Well, Beatrice, sometimes the best wedding gift is a lesson in consequences." I could see tears starting to form in her eyes, but I felt no pity. She had made her choice 3 months ago when she decided her father's love was worth $40,000, but his presence was worth nothing. "I want everyone here to see what transformation looks like," I concluded, "both physical and moral. And I want my daughter to understand that respect is not something you take from the people who love you. It's something you earn." The applause started slowly from the elderly woman in front, then spread through the room like wildfire. Within moments, most of the reception was clapping, not for Beatrice and her perfect wedding, but for the father who had refused to stay buried in shame. I set the microphone back in its stand and turned toward the exit, my head held high. The applause followed me as I stepped away from the microphone, growing stronger rather than fading. Individual voices began to rise from the crowd, calling out approval and support. "Bravo!" shouted someone from the back. "Absolutely magnificent!" "What courage!" called out another guest. "You look incredible, sir!" I nodded graciously to the crowd, my transformation on full display as I moved through the reception hall. The elderly woman who had first recognized my change approached me directly, her eyes bright with admiration. "Young man," she said, and I nearly smiled at being called young at 65. "What you've accomplished is extraordinary, both your physical transformation and your moral courage. I'm Margaret Fairfield. I've known Richard's family for years." "Thank you, Mrs. Fairfield. I appreciate your kind words." "That daughter of yours had no right to treat you so shamefully," she continued, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "A father deserves respect, especially one willing to sacrifice so much for his child's happiness." More guests were approaching now, forming a receiving line of sorts. A distinguished gentleman in his 50s stepped forward, extending his hand. "Robert Chen, Richard's business partner. I have to say, your dedication is inspiring. How much weight did you lose?" 43 pounds, I replied, accepting his firm handshake, along with a considerable amount of misplaced trust. He winced sympathetically. "Family can be complicated, but what you've shown here tonight, standing up for yourself with such dignity, that's something special." Behind this growing circle of supporters, I could see Beatrice sitting at the head table, her face buried in her hands, while Richard rubbed her shoulders helplessly. The wedding reception continued around her, but the celebration had transformed into something else entirely. Guests were no longer focused on congratulating the bride. They were processing a moral lesson about respect and consequences. A younger woman approached, someone I recognized as one of Beatrice's bridesmaids. Her expression was thoughtful rather than hostile. "Mr. Bryant, I'm Sarah, Beatrice's maid of honor. I had no idea about any of this. She told us you had passed away recently. As you can see, reports of my death were greatly exaggerated." I straightened my tie, still marveling at how well the expensive suit fit my transformed frame. Sometimes people find it easier to bury inconvenient truths rather than face them. Sarah glanced back toward the head table, then returned her attention to me. "What you've accomplished is amazing. I hope she learns from this." "That, my dear, is entirely up to her." The crowd around me was growing, and I realized it was time for my exit. I had said what needed to be said, demonstrated what needed to be proven. Justice had been served with the dignity it deserved. I raised my voice slightly to address the gathering supporters. "Thank you all for your kind words and understanding. Tonight has shown me that respect is indeed something that must be earned, and apparently I've earned yours." More applause erupted, accompanied by calls of "Hear, hear," and "Well said." I turned toward Beatrice one final time. She was looking at me now, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her perfect wedding makeup ruined by tears of humiliation and regret. "I hope you now understand the value of respect, daughter," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the reception hall. "Every father deserves dignity from his children. Remember that in your marriage." Richard nodded at me over her head, his expression conveying both apology and newfound understanding. He was a good man who had married into a complicated situation, and I felt sorry for him. The crowd parted respectfully as I walked toward the exit, guests stepping aside and continuing to offer words of encouragement and praise. The transformation they were witnessing wasn't just physical, it was the restoration of a man's dignity through perseverance and moral courage. Outside, the June evening was warm and perfect, Portland's summer air carrying the scent of roses from the garden. I walked to my truck with measured steps, each one carrying me further from the broken relationship I had tried so hard to preserve and closer to the self-respect I had worked 3 months to rebuild. As I started the engine, I could see guests still streaming out of the reception hall, some heading to their cars while others gathered in small groups, discussing what they had just witnessed. The wedding would be remembered, but not for the reasons Beatrice had planned. Driving home through the familiar streets of Laurelhurst, I felt a satisfaction deeper than mere revenge. I had proven to myself, to my daughter, and to everyone present, that transformation was possible at any age, and that dignity was worth fighting for. The man who had been called disgusting 3 months ago was gone forever. In his place was someone who commanded respect, not through demands or manipulation, but through character, perseverance, and the courage to demand the treatment he deserved. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, justice had been served with the dignity it required. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.